Coming up on today's news, Becky Lynch may be on the brink of a return to WWE, there might be some NXT call-ups in the works, a review of last night's episode of SmackDown, and more. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and enable notifications for daily wrestling news videos.
Support WrestleTalk!
It's been over a year since we last saw Becky Lynch in a WWE ring, and what a bloody year it's been. However, it seems like we may not have to wait much longer to see her again. PW Insider has reported that Lynch was backstage at the WWE Performance Center this week. She was said to be looking jacked, as if she had never left. The report was later updated to say that she was training on Thursday with Indy Hartwell and backstage at SmackDown on Friday. It was also reported by Fightful Select that several women in WWE have hoped that Lynch will return soon, as they feel the booking of WWE's women's division will improve with her back. Kind of like how WWE cared about the women's division when Ronda Rousey was around. And no other time. Lynch began her hiatus from WWE the day after Money in the Bank 2020, where she announced she was pregnant and relinquished the Raw Women's Championship to Asuka. Lynch has since had her baby and should be able to make her return whenever she and WWE deem appropriate. What would you do with Lynch upon her return? Let me know in the comments, because I'll be replying to people from out of nowhere. Two more names who were backstage at last night's SmackDown were NXT champion Karrion Kross and NXT North American champion Bronson Reed. PW Insider reported that Kross and Reed were backstage at SmackDown to take part in a dark match for WWE officials. The report also stated that main roster call-ups for Kross and Scarlett have been discussed recently, however it was not clear whether this dark match was a deciding factor in those talks. Kross and Reed have both won their respective titles in recent months, and one would think that they would be relieved of their championships before being called up. However, WWE has called people up before taking the titles off them in the past. Most recently, the Viking Raiders were called up to the main roster in 2019 while they were still NXT Tag Team Champions. Rather than losing the titles to another team, they forfeited the belts and continued their run on Raw. However, there are some other NXT call-ups that don't go quite so smoothly, and by that, I mean basically all of them. Nikki Cross is the last remaining member of Sanity on WWE's main roster. Killian Dane has found his way back to NXT, while Eric Young and Alexander Wolf have since been released by WWE. However, when the group was originally called up in 2018, Cross did not make the trip. The move was criticized at the time, and now Alexander Wolf has given his thoughts in an exclusive interview with WrestleTalk's Louis Dangoor. Regarding Cross being left in NXT, Wolf said, "It sucked. It sucked because we kind of had a feeling we were getting called up, and we heard some friends up on the main roster, and they overheard talkings of, yeah, when those Sanity guys come up. But in the end, it got picked from there that just the lads came up, not Nikki." Wolf also went on to say that the decision to keep Cross in NXT was beneficial to her career, and said he thinks the move was made because Triple H couldn't afford to lose any more members of the NXT women's division. Cross was most recently portrayed as an inexperienced performer on Raw. Quite odd, as she has more experience than anyone on the Raw women's roster besides Asuka. Oh, silly me, that didn't take place in WWE, and thus it doesn't count, right? And now it's time for a review of last night's episode of SmackDown in about 5 minutes. Thank you for being an awesome pledge hammer on Patreon. Arnie K, the K stands for the coolest dude ever. You can get your own shoutout and loads of exclusive bonus content by visiting us at patreon.com/WrestleTalk. After it was announced that the Roman Reigns vs Rey Mysterio Universal title match had been moved to SmackDown instead of at Hell in a Cell, I was initially confused, but willing to let it play out. Maybe they have something cool planned, maybe it'll play into another story on Sunday, or maybe it'll be completely pointless. The hype for the Cell match opened the show, with Rey Mysterio cutting an emotional promo about how he couldn't just wait until Sunday to beat up Reigns, before Reigns offered Rey one last chance to pull out of the match. This was good stuff. We then had the big in-ring debut of Commander Aziz, after a couple of solid promos from Cruz and Aziz and Big E and Kevin Owens respectively, with the latter showcasing the duo's really good chemistry. Unlike the big in-ring debut of a large man in a tag team at WrestleMania, Commander Aziz was not Omos here. His big initial tag in came early in the match, and he came in and slowed the pace right down, hitting punches and suplexes and wrestling fundamentals, and that's about it. Sami Zayn was on commentary for this match, and he ended up distracting Owens, who walked right into a Nigerian nail from Aziz for the victory. Aziz's debut was underwhelming. Backstage, DeVille and Pierce make Owens vs Sami official for Hell in a Cell WrestleMania rematch. After that came the battle for the crown with Shinsuke Nakamura versus King Corbin, and look, I know, I had a meltdown last week about this whole feud, but that was my breaking point. Now I'm just beyond caring. They had a decent match, in all fairness to them, and then Shinsuke won with a Kinshasa. So I guess he's no longer King Corbin then? I still really don't care about any of this. Bianca Belair comes out and cuts the same promo she's cut since WrestleMania, about how Bayley reminds her of bullies, but she overcame them and she'll overcome Bayley. She then challenges Bayley for a Hell in a Cell match on Sunday instead of a regular singles match, and Bayley comes out, beats her up, and holds her title up as all the screens in the Thunderdome change to her holding the title. Mind games. Or whatever. This definitely, categorically, in no way, shape or form was a drastic and emergency replacement Hell in a Cell match after one of them got taken off the show last minute. Right? Jimmy Uso backstage goes to Roman and says what he told him last week was right, and that if Roman needs help tonight, he'll be there, before Roman cuts him off, saying he needs Jay, and doesn't know where he is. He hasn't been seen since last week, so Roman tells him to find him. Otis versus Dawkins was supposed to be next, but the match never got off the ground, as Otis and Gable just attacked Dawkins before the bell, and left him laying. Cool. Cesaro versus Rollins was also made official for Sunday. WrestleMania rematch. Again! The two had an interview segment together where Seth told Cesaro he's disgusting and he hates everything he stands for, while Cesaro just pushed him off his chair and says he'll see him on Sunday. And then came the main event of Rey Mysterio versus Roman Reigns inside Hell in a Cell. This match started off quick, with Rey using all sorts of weapons to get the upper hand early, including a chair, a fire extinguisher, and a toolbox. God, don't use the toolbox inside a Hell in a Cell match, it'll bring back PTSD. After an ad break, which was super weird to see for a Hell in a Cell match, by the way, Roman took back control by yeeting Rey around like he was a child, because that's what he does. And then after another ad break, Rey came close to winning with 2 frog splashes, but Reigns powerbombed Rey from the inside of the ring to the outside, into the cell wall, and then made him tap in an inverted guillotine. After the match, Jimmy Uso came out and raised Roman's hand, kind of acknowledging him, finally, as the tribal chief. And that was the show. There really wasn't a whole lot that happened. So let's talk about this Hell in a Cell change. It really looks like Reigns won't be there on Sunday, with them having Bianca versus Bayley inside the cell instead, and with the addition of 2 matches of Owens versus Zayn and Cesaro versus Rollins. Which really begs the question, what was the reason they moved it? And we still don't know. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason for it. Perhaps after tomorrow's Hell in a Cell pay-per-view we'll have some more answers and things will start to make sense, but as of right now, this seems like a massive misstep to me. The match was fun enough, a really good TV match, but this is a Hell in a Cell match. Granted, that stipulation hasn't carried the weight it once did for years now, but even so, this felt like it added precisely nothing to this match. Not to mention the effect it had on the Reigns story as a whole. In all honesty, it felt like there was a solid story being built between Reigns and Mysterio, but the stuff that was up to the usual Reigns standard was the stuff revolving around Jimmy and Jay, and Jimmy's inclusion into the family. The Mysterio factor was almost getting in the way of the story that needed to be told, and I think this show proved that. If this was supposed to be Jimmy's big acceptance of Reigns and him finally joining alongside him, then this was incredibly underwhelming, and should have been a massive deal. Instead, it's just a raised hand after a fun but very confusing TV main event, leaving us with really more questions than when we went in. All in all, I think this was a mistake. We don't know the reasons they moved it, so there might be plenty of things we're not aware of that forced them to make this choice, but from the outside, if this was a decision they just made because they thought it would be a good idea or to pop a rating, this was detrimental to Sunday's pay-per-view, to this episode of SmackDown, to the Roman Reigns story, and Jimmy Uso's inclusion in the family. It was decent enough, but there could have been so much more, and this feels like a wasted opportunity. So that was the show. Let me know what you thought in the comments, and make sure to vote in our poll on a poll match on our community tab, where 73% of you voted for Roman yeets yet another Mysterio. This was a weird episode. Not much seemed to happen, and this very much felt like a panic episode to try and scramble after Reigns and Rey got moved onto this show. So overall, this show gets a 3 out of 5 smack bang in the middle.
Pro wrestling is not a sport at all, but an entertainment whose outcome is actually known before the battle begins.
It is now official. Wrestling is not really wrestling.
What is it if it's not a sport? I don't know.
This is the day that kayfabe died. Explained.